Alright, making a YouTube video on the inmendham channel. Yeah, it should be a Vlogger Dome TV show kind of video, but it's sort of going to be a response to Hafla Day, whose fundamental complaint is there's a semantics to word use, and he's saying that the substance of my argument is somehow made out of pejorative language, cheating of emphasis and distortion of the actual circumstance using language that has a taint on it. And I would make the exact opposite argument to him, that all traditional conversation about life or nature has been layered with sugar-coated nonsense like Mother Nature and all kinds of language that is not accurate or explicit, and that is tainted with a optimism bias, a God bias, a spiritual bias. So anyway, so the way I'm combining these two videos is that I've been doing this word thing. I've been sort of obsessed with words, and the fact that I see a mechanics to them. It's like I'm seeing the matrix in them or something again. This idea of there's words are almost a math. They're mechanical. They're mechanical parts, and their relationship to each other is very mechanical. It's through other words that connect words. So anyway, in Tiny Chat, I spent some portion of the evening, a couple of hours maybe, I don't know, an hour at least, just extracting words from each other as a group, and trying to put together a list of, say, 100 words that would be the mechanics of reality. You can make the substance of our understanding out of these words, and some kind of simple understanding of these words, and then their relationship to each other. Here's the list of words, and I've been playing with it, rearranging them. So I'll post that in the description. Obviously the bold won't be showing and all that kind of stuff, so you lose some of the continuity of this. Yeah, so I'm just starting. This is just a draft in the middle of the video, but I think it's useful just to go through how it's already, gaining a coherency in providing a simple line, a simple path through our existence and through our function that just makes what's going on so kind of obvious. So, the trickiest word is infinite. Okay, I put it on top of the list just because you got to do something with that concept. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to dismiss it and just say it doesn't really matter whether this awakeness that exists now with consciousness in the universe, it doesn't matter whether it happens all the time or whether it only happens here, this one time, that this kind of bizarre, and it's bizarre by everything we've touched in the universe, this bizarre complexity has arisen. But it has. And the fact that it has means something. It's not necessarily a good story from my perspective, just because it means that this is a vulnerability that exists, that matter can be configured into this sentient form and harmed, and there won't be anything redeeming. There won't be anything accomplished for that price paid. But anyway, for the sake of our existence, we know that where we came from, and that's this abioGenesis and evolution. So this is the cause and effect chain. So let's agree it's a cause and effect universe. It's determinism. The matter and the energy are functioning within very closed restraints. No magic involved here. The substance has to exist. It has to exist in a configuration for this complexity to fall out of it, to precipitate, to condensate out of it. So you have lots of words to go with that. The reduction, complexity, change, improvement, parasite, cannibal, all the words that might be important. So I'll just go with parasite and cannibal for the moment, just to get to Hothliday's point. So he finds it offensive or wrong or abusive to describe the preying of sentient organisms on sentient organism as a form of cannibalism. I think it would be perfectly appropriate, for example, to call slavery, to describe it, to give it accurate portrayal, would be to call it a form of cannibalism. This idea that you're going to use the welfare of another human being, use it up, consume it, abuse them, use up the value of their life to maintain your life. That this is a clear cannibalistic activity. It's appropriately seen as that. It's not a pejorative use of words. It's not a slanted or an abuse of concept to describe it as cannibalistic. And I would argue that describing what's happening on planet Earth, this island planet, as I've described it, it's like a lifeboat in the ocean, and it has resorted to cannibalism. It has resorted to finding a life by living off the life that exists. And that's the function of much of life. It's how new life exists, is finding a new environment to be parasitical on, a new thing to exploit. So exploit might be an important word to add in here. I'll have to remember that. So I highlighted certain, evolution's a big word. Reflex is the concept here. It's a reaction system that ties to determinism. We really don't act. We're just reactions. And the mechanism is doing this, for the sake of reproduction thing. That's the agenda being set is a survival game. And that's pretty much it. And survival requires you to play a certain way to survive. So I think the gladiator war is a perfectly reasonable analogy. Again, he would argue this is somehow pejorative, when I would say there's no indication that there aren't direct relationships between this metaphor and what actually is happening in the world, in the sense that there's a simple agenda. It's survival. You go into the arena with tools, and you use your tools to maintain your existence, and to do that you will have to usually smite your adversaries, because they're after the same thing you are, which is this survival thing. And it won't be survival of everyone, and it won't be at everyone's benefit kind of thing. Yeah. Alright, so the thing that I like that filtered right out of this really simply and really quickly was two concepts I've talked about, which is that these are the two kinds of brain activity we're involved in. These are two of our tools. So one of the tools is feelings, which create an agenda engine. It's a motivational engine. I've said that feelings are the value engine of reality. So this will be in bigger type eventually, because this is an important concept. But it creates value. This engine of feelings, this engine of a needing, motivating, sensate being, creating this idea of hunger and desire, dependency, addiction, want, hope. We got desire in there twice. We get rid of that second desire. We don't need two of those. Yeah, one's more than enough. And we have the unpleasant sensation. So we have the basic concept is that it creates a qualitative experience. That's the value. And it's attraction and repulsion. I would argue more complex analysis, one might be able to realize and see that the idea of attraction is really the relief or the absence of repulsion. So the negative sensations are eased, which create a positive momentum. So it's much like physics. There's only one force. The force isn't, gravity isn't pushing and pulling. It's only doing one. Figuring out which one is a question, but it's doing one of those things, and I would argue that the mechanics of our dynamic is similarly, it fits a similar schematic to physics in that these words don't both exist. There is only the one, it's either the push or the pull, and I think logically it can be understood that repulsion, the negative, came first. The need, the absence, the deprivation is the first cause, and the second cause is the fact that you create a positive elevation of circumstance by eliminating the deficit. So if you can think of it, an elevator and coming out of the basement, idea, it's rising up, but it's still below ground. That forward progress is still forward progress, but it's relative to a whole that shouldn't be created in the first place. So that gets into this. Some elements of the emotional words are in here. Pride and ego and need, and it needs more filtering and fixing. But that's the basic. It's one of the fundamental mechanisms of these organisms. One of these tools is this motivational thing, this thing that creates a fire under you, compels you to move, compels you to change your circumstance. And the second obvious element of our toolkit is this strategy engine. So the senses give us this qualitative feeling, and then we have this intelligence, this memory, that's capable of understanding and calculating and doing logic and creating the word map and models in there, that enables us to find a strategy. So I've called it a scheming engine in red, strategy engine. I mean, obviously scheming engine is more pejorative, but I would argue that this is probably the more rudimentary, the more Neanderthalian truth to it. That's the origin of it, is a scheme. Strategy is almost too dignified for where its origins are, and it's basically just exists to sets the agenda. This creates the way of satisfying the agenda being set by the feelings. So our basic function, our native function, is this. And this is the same function as all mammals, all fish, all things with a neurology almost have these elements where feelings set the agenda and intelligence schemes a plan to satisfy the feeling agenda. So now the real question is when you do this modeling of the game board, it becomes possible to recognize that my pawn doesn't look any different and isn't functionally different than the pawn next to me. And I can start to recognize that this game is bigger than one pawn, that the game is bigger than this one sentient. So now through intelligence you can recognize something just very simple, that feelings, the agenda engine, doesn't just exist in you, it exists in all the feeling things. All of them are qualitatively experiencing, all of them are creating value, and the fundamental value of their welfare is all comparable. Maybe not exactly equal, but comparable. It exists. It has value components. Whether it has 5 value components and you have 10 value components just means that as individuals you might be more important than another individual, but it doesn't mean the other individual isn't still a 5. There's still 5 value components in them. So I'm just saying this strategy engine, because it gave us this modeling capacity, to create some plan that would work in obtaining our gratification, it's given us this ability to now see agenda that doesn't exist inside of ourself, but exists inside of other feeling creatures. Agenda that's broader than our own gratification and satisfaction, and to make it our agenda. So now our agenda gets tied to the agenda engine of these other qualitatively feeling, value-creating organisms. And so now we're doing different calculations. The scheme now is for something bigger and broader. And so now we get to, this is the mechanics, and then this is the philosophy, or the part that, you know, where you say, what is the right scheme? And this is how we define this right scheme thing. And so I would kind of argue that, you know, the model has to be coherent and reasonable to the facts, you know, logical. These are all important words. But the thing to be cognizant of and aware of is that we can be skewed in how these facts are fed to us, what the premises of our thinking is. So it's this pollution of our psychology versus the philosophy, and the fact that we are a selfish organism in function, in feelings. We personally feel some portion of our agenda now is still personal to us. This other agenda that makes it, that we've been exposed to through intelligence, we don't have to personally experience in the real sense. We only can experience in a compassionate or empathetic sense. We don't have to directly feel their pain. And so that creates an unevenness that's a perversion of any kind of legitimacy. We would say that these values are the same, yet we can't know them personally the same way. We certainly know our personal feelings much more intimately than we can know the experience of somebody else. And so this becomes important in terms of when you're doing philosophy, when you're doing thinking. You have to recognize this disproportionality, that your selfishness has an advantage, and that you've got to be very careful of that psychology perverting the truth. I would argue to Hoffladay that that's what he's doing. He's allowing tradition and heritage and legacy to persuade him of a self-importance and a perspective that doesn't recognize that we have done it wrong, in terms of we have disproportionately recognized the importance of these concepts, the difference between suffering and a gratified impulse, a projection of value, something where the need you create and the need you satisfy in the world. These are very different things. Sorry about this. I'm going to fix this Band-Aid. It's a stupid noisy thing. I have to put a new one on there. Yeah, it moved again. Okay, I have to fix that. I guess the easiest way to fix it is just take it off. Okay. There's no wind in here. Anyway, so yeah, I didn't realize that's probably what's been creating all this damn noise. You know, when I move the camera, it's been rather noisy. Anyway, so this is the how do we ascertain our actual now higher goals? So goals not defined by the agenda engine alone, but goals filtered through our understanding. So that's the thing we're attempting is to establish goals and to do this efficiency and productivity thing, to create a profit scheme. So a scheme that is profitable, that maximizes the value production. So it has to minimize the negative qualitative experience and maximize the positive qualitative experience, in essence. And evaluating that in some sort of straightest line, net effect, is what you're after. And you have to do that in this atmosphere of risk and the fact that we can't know explicitly all truth, that some of it has to be understood probabilistically, and that has to, that's going to work on our understanding and our confidence in some scheme that we come up with to create a life performance that maximizes the value, that gets not only the most gratification, certainly in the personal feeling being, but in the effect on the other feeling beings that are also producing the value quanta. Not so you know, this is really all there is. This is, and it's, you know, barely over 100 words here, you know, 120 or whatever. Some of these can be eliminated from you know, they don't need to all be included. And so I certainly have some of the more mechanical gravity and integrity, and, you know, different words here that are just, you know, these probably don't need to be included. But, you know, I'm just, so this is the start, and I think it's a, you know, the simple chain is here. You know, that we can understand that we're a machine. The machine has an agenda. The machine is interacting in the world, which will have a consequence on the other agenda engines, and that the process of thinking or being intelligent is to figure out what's efficient and productive, and to understand that in this context of the risk of being wrong. Yeah. And the risk of not recognizing the value you're really, the depth of the sea you're playing in, the depth of the water, so to speak, you're swimming in. Yeah. So I think that's, you know, it's a good start, I think. And I just, you know, obviously tying this into something more visually interesting will be the next step. Putting into video or something, you know, moving words and images and whatever, and some sort of crap like that, I suppose, would be good for the TV show kind of thing. But this is it's a very good map of the basic topography of existence. This is the topography of our existence. This indicates what it is, what its real material substance is, in my opinion. It's all right there. So anyway, I think that's probably enough of a video. So I'll be back and such. Yeah, maybe I'll just throw in as a funny. The JCPLNL came to read the meters today, and they brought the cops with them. I mean, it's just hilarious, right? They called the cops to come read the meters. I mean, why don't they declare the whole town a red zone? Because inmendham could be almost anywhere. Yeah, it could be anywhere in town. So, you know, maybe the whole town should be a red zone, because they'll never know where I am at any one moment. Yeah. I might complain at them. Holy shit, a complainer's loose. Really is hilarious. Like in an ironic, insane way. Anyway. Yeah. You're just like, no. This creature called human will not make it. Will not make anything useful. Yeah, it's too stupid. Stupid. Anyway, till next time.